Welcome, everyone. My name is Hallie Caldwell, and I'm a member of the Quad Education team. It's a pleasure to have you all join us for our webinar on supplementing your resume and transcript. We have two fantastic Quad Education consultants and college admissions experts with us today who are going to walk us through this topic that's relevant for college applications and honestly, every part of your professional life moving forward. We'll introduce them in just a second. A little background on Quad Education. We are an admissions consulting company, and we help students and families prepare for college applications starting anywhere between 6th and 11th, 12th grade, and help students prep their profiles, choose classes and activities to help round out their applications. And then we also help with the entire admissions process, from getting letters of recommendation, writing your personal statements, choosing what schools to apply to, and actually sending in your applications and choosing where to go. We're glad you could join us today. So we'll introduce our two panelists. We'll talk about why your resume and transcript are significant and important. We'll talk about what colleges are looking for in those things. And then we'll dive into the details on how to write an impactful resume. We'll talk about how to find new opportunities for growth, how to showcase your academic excellence. We'll go into some additional tips and tricks, and then have a Q&A session. So we have Dan Stratford and Arianna Lee here with us today, and I will let them introduce themselves. Dan?
Hi, everyone. I'm Dan. This is a fun topic. I'm glad to be here. Love working with students preparing for their college admissions. I'm a two-time graduate of Stanford and lifelong learner, and this is always a fun opportunity to do these webinars.
Thanks so much for being here, Dan. And Arianna?
Hi, I'm Arianna Lee. I graduated from Dartmouth College, and I've definitely agree with Dan. Can't wait to dive into this topic. Helping students with their resumes, helping them stand out in general in the college application process is always a favorite, and definitely understand that the process can be overwhelming, but that's why we're here to help.
Great. Thanks so much. Truly a pleasure to have you both. So let's dive right in and talk about the significance of your resume and transcripts.
Great. So I can jump in here. So your college application. So if you're applying to one, sometimes they do require a resume, and so that's obviously an important part of your application. But knowing how to do this is a good idea anyway. If you're applying to a lot of schools, like I said, some of them will probably require it. It's a good way to kind of focus your thoughts. It's a good discipline to kind of crystallize like what are the key strengths and key activities that you want to communicate, and you'll use it in lots and lots of places throughout your life, for internships, for job applications, for all sorts of things.
Fantastic. So let's talk a little bit about how it's helpful beyond your application. I know, Dan, you touched on this just a little bit.
Absolutely. Yeah, so looking at how this can be applicable outside of the application, scholarships. A lot of scholarships will require a resume, whether it be external or even sometimes in the internal scholarships for specific school university scholarships. They may also require a resume as well. Jobs and internships. This is awesome to get a head start on your professional career that unfortunately lasts for the rest of your life probably. So it's good to get a head start and just know, hey, how can I assess my skills, accomplishments, and really highlight this for whoever's going to be looking at my resume for a college interview or outside of that for the actual position.
Great. All right.
So a lot of the students that we work with as college admissions counselors are really interested in Ivy League schools, and so this is a good point to just kind of orient you to some of those. They're oldest schools in the U.S. They're known for their very high standards and being pretty exclusive, pretty selective, pretty low acceptance rates. and consistently rate, in the top 20 universities in the world. And these are all names that you've heard of, right? Harvard, Yale, Princeton, Brown, Dartmouth, Columbia, Cornell, UPenn. And so in order to stand out for these schools, thinking hard about your resume and what sort of things you want to use activities you want to use to build your resume is a really good idea.
Absolutely. So with that, we're going to dive into what colleges are looking for within your resume and how they're looking for you to stand out with that.
Absolutely. So it's very important. Every college will have mission, vision, and core values that ultimately describe what they're looking for in their student body. So make sure it's important that you do your research online, take school tours, work with your admissions counselors to kind of get a better idea. How can I align myself with what the college is, what their values are? Am I the right fit for the college? It's okay if you're not. That's the best way to kind of assess that and figure out, is this the school for me? That way you can better align your resume and the activities that you're pursuing if that's a school of choice.
Yep, and like Arianna said, if we can go to the next slide.
Yeah.
So you do want to be aware of like some of the specific things that university cares about with their mission, values, vision, so that you can tailor your resume. But a lot of the colleges are looking for a lot of the same things, right? And so it's a good idea to they're all looking for, do you have academic excellence? Do you have diverse experiences? Have you challenged yourself? Have you explored your passions? Do you show leadership capabilities? Do you get involved in your community? So you want your resume for all of the schools that you apply to, you want it to highlight these qualities. And then after that, once you understand like the specific school, you can make some small adjustments to kind of tailor it to the specific things that that school really cares about.
All right, so the real kind of key points of our webinar here today are talking about how to write an impactful resume. So let's dive into that a little bit more.
Awesome. So understanding how to write an impactful resume. You've already spent all this time working on your actual application. You're like, I'm done. What else can I put? This is awesome to kind of think further with your resume. How do you highlight maybe some of those things that you've already put in your application? You only get so many characters to put in your Common App. Maybe this is the time where you can highlight a specific project or a leadership role that you didn't get to really dive into for your Common App application. That's where you can kind of highlight it further in your resume. So you want to look and see, okay, extracurriculars, work experiences, competencies, any achievements that that you didn't really get to further dive into the Common App. That's where you can put it in your resume.
So some common things that you should include in your resume: your contact information, your high school information, student info. For experience, this should include, any work experience you have, any volunteer experience that you've had. You can have a section for awards and recognitions. Highlight your leadership roles. You can put your coursework in there. Don't take up too much space with that, but that's a good place that if you do list coursework, if there's really impactful projects or something, that could be an opportunity to highlight that. Any special skills that you've acquired. And then, this is an optional piece, but, you can put things, usually it's a line at the bottom, things that you're like really passionate about that kind of make your personality shine through in your resume. And the tricky thing about this is that, typically you want to keep all of this in one single page. You really want your resume to be like the snapshot of like who you are as an applicant. And that can take a lot of work, and it's okay to like start with like dump all this in a page and then refine it over time to try to get just the most important pieces condensed on that one single page.
I think that's one of the hardest pieces for me, and I think most people both when you first write your resume and as you continue adjusting it as you move through your career. It's something that I struggle with and is so hard to try and fit everything into such a small space.
You know, one thing that that works really well for me is I keep what I keep a Google Doc that I call my everything resume, and it uses the same format as my resume, but it just has like literally everything that I've ever done since I created my first resume, which I don't remember when it was. Like most of the items that are on there, I don't reference ever, but occasionally I'm applying to a job where I feel like something is really relevant from deep in my past, and I can pull that item up. And so if you're, you know, wherever you are right now, it's a good idea to just get started with your resume where it's at right now. Choose a format. We'll talk a little bit about that coming up here, but and just like start putting those line items in there, and let that be like a running doc for you over time that you can use as a resource.
Yeah, absolutely. And if you all haven't yet done so, it's really good to see if maybe you can get your domain name, buy your domain name, and create like a running resume as well, like what Dan was talking about, or even a LinkedIn. Start adding all of your awards and things. Wow. But yes, how do you write an impactful resume? So brainstorming. So whether it's a Google Doc or even writing it out on a regular sheet of paper, however format you want to do it, start working on it. Start thinking of what is everything that I've done? What are the projects that I've been working on? What are the awards that I've won? And keep writing it down. The big thing is a lot of people seem to underestimate the importance of things that they do, so they don't include it. Include everything and then figure out later what are things that are my most important to highlight. That way you can kind of work with someone else to kind of determine, are these things beneficial to put on my resume, or should I leave this off and put it in a different section of my application, or not include it at all. Formatting. There are many templates that you can use, whether that be through the Google Suites or Microsoft Word, whatever the case is. You can look up templates for resumes to better format and see, how can I get this all on one page? Review and proofread. Once you put everything together, everything's done, you've got the right template together, you've entered all of your work experience and all of everything you want to highlight. Please make sure you proofread it yourself. You get others to proofread it, your quad education mentor counselor, your parents, your friends, everyone to proofread it, because I've seen hiring managers put a resume to the side or in the trash because it had grammatical errors. It showed that how is this person going to do well in this position if they didn't even take time to look at their own resume? So just make sure that you have those things together to write an impactful resume. Pass off to Dan.
Yeah, second that. It should because this is like you on one page. I mean, it needs to be like probably one of the most polished, you know, documents that you put out there. So, you know, let that be reflected in kind of how you are kind of, you know, perfecting that, polishing that.
Yeah, and I think you also go through many iterations of your resume, both as you move through your life and career, but also maybe the first format that you choose, you can't quite fit everything where you want it. You can't get the flow that you want. You can tinker with it constantly. So I think there's a fine line of being done and making sure it's polished, but also figuring out what format works best and making sure that it's really reflective of you. All right, so let's talk about finding new opportunities for growth, which really is, as you're moving through high school and college, how can you find things to add to your resume and show who you are a little bit better?
So lots of things that you can do with this to kind of build out your resume. This is one of the you know, big value adds of like working with an admissions counselor early, especially, you know, to take a look at kind of your persona, your strengths, and then your areas of growth, and figuring out, okay, what are the sort of activities that can, you know, build out those areas of growth, or what can you do within your current activities without adding anything additional to show some of those things that we've talked about, whether that's leadership, initiative, teamwork, any of those, exploring your passions, all those things that we've talked about. But here's a list for kind of thinking about that right now. So don't be afraid to explore your interests and passions. I think this is really important. This is something that college admissions teams really care about, that you are somebody who has interests, who is curious, who is passionate, and follows those. And so one mistake that I think a lot of students that I work with, fall into sometimes is the kind of box checking thing of like, oh, I need a sport, oh, I need arts, oh, I need something. It's like, oh, they kind of, I feel a little sad. I feel like, oh, you lost yourself a little bit there. Like find what you're interested in, and then follow that. You can put together a great resume based on like who you are and what you're passionate about. So that matters. That's something I feel really passionate about. Don't be afraid to push yourself out of your comfort zone. Try something new. Don't feel like, oh, is that going to build my resume or not? Like it's good to explore and try to push that comfort zone. And some of those things actually do end up being great things to put on your resume. I love starting a project. There's so many different ways that you can shape that to explore your interests. I think we've done a webinar just on each of these items. So much we can say about that. Know your strengths and your weaknesses. Look for volunteer opportunities, work experiences, internships, any experiential things that can align with your interests.
Absolutely. There once was a girl that did like 30 different extracurriculars, work experience, everything, just trying to build a resume. And when asked, hey, what do you love most? It was one of the things she did the least of, was the thing that she was actually the most passionate about. And that just goes to show you quality versus quantity. Had she spent more time, instead of spreading her time over all of those things, trying to check the box and build the resume, she could have figured out how she could make that more of a career path instead of just checking a box to just build this metaphorical resume of hers. So just make sure, you are putting quality versus quantity in what you're doing.
And it sounds like, I think from what I remember both Arianna, you and Dan saying in previous webinars also, it's better to have a ton of hours in one or two extracurriculars that you're super passionate about than a ton of hours spread among 30. It shows your commitments and passions.
I think especially on a resume where you only have so much real estate on the page, right? You can't list 30 things, but you can list. So you want the ones that are there to be really impactful and be really showcase like your accomplishments and your leadership and your impact.
Absolutely.
But that also doesn't mean you need to cut a bunch of activities because it won't fit on a resume if you love doing all of them.
The resume is not the end goal, but it is an important tool. And yeah.
All right, academic excellence.
Awesome. So things you can do. One big thing, just keep challenging yourself. And you're already here, you're already taking step one to challenging yourself on figuring out what can I do better in this journey. So take challenging courses. That is definitely something that admissions officers are going to look into as far as figuring out what was the intensity of the courses offered, or what were the most challenging courses available? Did you take advantage of it? Why not? Or what did you do instead? You want to start thinking in terms of that. What is challenging to me? Don't necessarily go for quote unquote layups. That's what we used to call easy classes. Figure out what you're passionate in, what your, what's the right phrasing for this? What you can handle. We can't tell you to take all AP classes and then fail them. Take classes that are pushing you to the brink that you can handle. Take on extracurriculars that allow you to apply your knowledge. So if you are looking to do internships, or if you're looking to go into medicine, maybe you're looking to figure out how you can partner and do lab work, or take college courses. Taking advanced classes are also really great, because that shows that, hey, I understood the knowledge that was taught to me, and now I'm demonstrating that as well. Maybe you're taking the AP test. It's not necessary, but that's also something that will help show, hey, I really mastered the things that I was taught within this course. Taking a college course, if your school offers it, is also really great, because now you're preparing early and figuring out how the college course may work when you actually go to college. It's also very essential to pursue those academic interests. So again, what Dan said, something that you're genuinely interested in, rather quantity, look at ones that are really meaningful to you, that will give you a better opportunity to do well and really apply yourself to what you're interested in. And then lastly, ensure your coursework is well-rounded. Now, some schools, they may be more tech focused or more leaning one way or another, but overall it's more important to have a well-rounded coursework, course load, because that will show to the schools, hey, this student is really great at STEM, but they're also able to manage and do well in their English or soft science courses as well. So make sure that you are applying yourself in all fields if possible. Sorry if I kind of auctioneer that.
Oh, that was great. You hit a lot. Anything else you want to add, Dan?
No, I think that's a good list. We talked about challenging yourself, the advanced classes. You can put those on. I don't recommend, this isn't like, it shouldn't be a duplicate of your transcript, right? So like this should be a place to like highlight things. They have your transcript, they'll see the full thing, but you know, if there's one that's particularly interesting or you excelled in, or there's a project that you thought was particularly noteworthy, this is a great place to put that in. Yeah, being well-rounded in your coursework, academic interests. Yeah, always be on the lookout for ways that you can like do something experiential with something. If there's something in your classes that like really pique your interests, like look for like, see if you can follow up with your teacher if there's like additional projects or, you know, community contacts they can like connect you with. Like that could be a good avenue to do some authentic resume building.
All right, so we're going to dive into some additional tips, tricks, things to think about when creating your resume, and then we'll open things up for a Q&A. So we have some questions that have been submitted already, but feel free to go pop any questions that you have in the Q&A box. And Dan and Arianna will be answering those shortly.
Cool. So just to share some tips, there's so much that can be said about resumes, and so you know, do an online search too. You can find all sorts of great tips, but here's some good ones to think through. So you want to have some details. You don't want it to be too generic about what you do. Keep it focused on like what you specifically accomplished, what actions that you took. I think it's important to you know, start all of your bullet points with an action word, you know, showcasing what you specifically did. You want to keep it short and sweet. We talked about keeping it all on one page, and that can take a lot of work. Start with it big, you know, several pages if you need to, and then refine it down to the most, you know, crystallized pieces of your experience. So don't make up your resume. That's hopefully obvious. Don't do that. Bad idea. It'll catch up to you at some point. Provide statistics. So the more that you can quantify what you do and your impact, the better, right? How like by what percentage did the club grow under your leadership, right? How many books did you distribute to this school? You know, get those numbers in. Those really pop and they really show tangible. You know, recruited 10 people, whatever it is. Get numbers in wherever you can. Right, with certainty, active voice versus passive voice. So really think about go back to your English class, right? You're going to use the verbs. I did this, like I led this, I initiated this, and you know, really think about those verbs. Yeah, demonstrate your strengths and your passions. This is kind of in the selection. For me, this is in the selection piece as you kind of write your full resume with many pages as your draft, and then you say, okay, well, which of these items are my biggest strengths or my biggest passions, and those are the ones you want to keep refining up.
Absolutely. And remember, it's how you frame things as well. So for example, being a busboy at a restaurant, or maybe you change it or analyze it from a different perspective. You're initiating sanitation protocols by washing, you know what I mean? Like, it's figuring out how to frame it in a different way.
Yeah, a way that like showcases like your action. Like, I identified a problem, I took an action, and it had an impact.
Absolutely.
One thing I would add here too is on the formatting piece, be mindful of parallel structures, right? So if you start every bullet point with a verb, make sure every bullet point really has a verb. You know, at the end of it, if you put a period on one of those bullet points, make sure there's a period on all of them. If you use a font for your headers, make sure it's the same font all the way through, right? Because remember, this is a snapshot of you. And people, you know, college admissions teams and employers and internship supervisors, they get lots of these resumes, and you only get maybe 30 seconds or something. You don't want anything to kind of distract. And so being really careful about that parallelism all the way through in your structure makes it really easy for them to access the great information that you're putting in it.
It's a great additional tip. All right, so let's move on to Q&A, and we have quite a bit of time here, and we have quite a few questions. So we will do our best to answer them, but keep adding in questions as well. So first question is, should we only submit the resume in one page? And I know we mentioned this a little bit earlier, but Dan or Arianna, maybe you can talk a little bit about the importance of having a one-page resume.
Try to do it. I have had cases where like I've, had somebody, it's like, well, it's okay to go into 2 pages, but really it's a 1 page is really pretty standard.
Yeah, I remember that the people that are going to be reviewing these won't have that much time. So you want to try and give them a snapshot as much as possible.
Most important things. Sometimes you can condense it, right? Like if you've written 10 research papers, that can be like one item, right? Like that could be one bullet point, not a bullet point for each of those research papers. Published, researched and published 10 research papers in these places, one, honorable mention here, right? That's one bullet point. You don't need to list each of those individually.
Like, it's great practice in learning how to say as much as possible and as few words as possible. So is it important to know another language to achieve this? And I think we're referring to having a well-rounded academic career. Is it important to know another language and take language classes for that?
And correct me if I'm wrong, but I believe that foreign language credits are required in most schools. Is that not the case?
Most schools, yeah.
Yeah, I think most schools you want at least 2 or 3 years.
And I might be misunderstanding the question, so apologies if so, but you can always include the classes that you're taking for foreign language and include that in your resume, that you've taken these courses or you've taken X amount of years of said course. Doesn't necessarily have to declare your proficiency in it, but that you've done that.
Yeah. And I think it's also really helpful if you are fluent or conversationally fluent to add that to a resume, particularly for jobs later after college, but also in college. There's a big market for people who are bilingual. So if you can add that to your resume, it's a good leg up.
Absolutely. Get the translator positions in college, make money virtually doing that.
Absolutely. But you don't need to be fluent in order to have a well-rounded education, but you probably need to take a couple of classes. So we have someone asking if a student might have made a mistake by taking health technology CTEs instead of in AP classes. Is there a way to make up for that?
Carla, my personal opinion on that is that it's only a mistake if the health tech courses were box checkers. I think there's lots of great things that can be learned there. If that's an area of passion, if that's an area of interest, like that can shine through. admissions teams are looking to see, is the student challenging himself or herself? Are they, if there are, advanced courses available, but it doesn't have to necessarily be AP. Always looking like based on what level of rigor is available, are they kind of pushing themselves to that? And of course, if health tech is like an area of passion, like there are schools and there are programs that will especially value that, and so that could be a real asset. So it just depends on kind of what your son's goals are, I would say.
All right. Question here is, should I use GIFs in my resume? And I'm going to say the answer very briefly is no, you should not.
I wouldn't.
No, just kidding.
Please don't.
Maybe on your website, you have a fun personality page and you throw some things in there that are classy. Clever.
And also a lot of times people won't be able to see the movement in the GIFs because of how resumes are submitted. So you won't get your point across anyway. So question, how do you get a fellowship? And I assume that means like fellowship or internship, and that we can have a whole webinar on, but maybe you can give just a couple pointers on how to find them and apply.
Yeah, absolutely. I would say, and I believe Dan mentioned this too as well, your teachers, your counselors are really great for local available opportunities. That's always a great place to start, because they will know, hey, are there any opportunities available that is specific to what you're interested in? And that would be a starting point. You also can look online. There are specific websites that have nothing but fellowships, nothing but internships available for the coming year, for the coming summer opportunities. And of course, you can always ask your quad education counselor, and we can always help work with you in figuring out what might be a good fit for fellowships or internships and how you can go about applying to them.
All right. Is putting student council events that you've done a good thing for your resume?
Yeah, definitely do it. That's awesome.
I think anything that you've had a hand in planning, creating, putting on is definitely important to put in your resume, and shows your commitment to something, which is great. All right. This is a great question. How far back should my resume go in time?
If you're applying for things relating to college, I would say no earlier than ninth grade. You want to keep it high school specific, and even less so for your resume. You remember, it's one page, maybe the last 3-4 relevant experiences, depending on how much space it takes up in your resume.
Yeah, I'd second that. I have seen cases where sometimes there's something in 8th grade or something that really stood out. But you've grown a lot since you were in middle school, right? Like you've gone through a lot of changes. Hopefully there's been a lot of things that you've done in the meantime. So do try to keep it in high school.
You also want it to be a snapshot of your life and who you are now. And a lot of those experiences participated in that, but your more recent activities will show that a little bit better. How long is a typical internship? That's going to be very much an it depends. Dan or Arianna, do you have anything more specific than that?
Yeah, depends on you and your timetable. Depends on the company. You can do it in the summer. You can do it very part-time during the school year. Yeah. Lots of different ways that you can structure that. If it's a formal thing, usually it's like 6 to 8 weeks in the summertime.
Yeah. And it could be location specific. Again, if you can spin it where it's long-term, that's always great, because it's showing that you continue what you're passionate in, or that particular experience. But otherwise, yeah, like what Dan said, typically summer, 6 to 8 weeks.
I would say the principle here is if you have some discretion in like how long it is, it's not about the length of it, it's about what were you able to accomplish. So like you want to, in your internship, you want to have like a project that you own. And you can say, here's what I did, and here's the impact that it had for this organization. So if it's just 1 week and or if it's 4 weeks and you just did a bunch of little things, that's not as impactful as if it were 3 weeks and you actually had a really meaningful project that moved the needle. Usually it does take like 6 weeks, if it's like a full-time thing to do a meaningful project. Or, if it's part-time during the school year, you can get a lot done over a semester or something.
Might be something to ask when you are in the process of applying to internships. And if you have an interview, ask about the projects that you might be able to have a hand in leading or participating in, and what a good amount of time for that is. Some internships are very structured and they're this many weeks, this many hours, and others are anywhere between X amount of weeks. And a little bit more flexible, but you want to make sure that you have enough structure in them as well. See, should our resume include a picture? And I am going to assume that that is a headshot. I've definitely seen a lot of resumes with headshots in them. Dan or Arianna, do either of you have like a standard rule there? I don't think that I've ever submitted a resume with a picture on it.
Me neither.
I personally have not, but I have seen resumes with pictures. Again, it's going to take up space. Maybe that's not something you prioritize considering you're trying to keep it to 1 page. And if you are going to include a picture, make it very professional and very shoulder headshot frame.
True headshot, yeah.
Similar to the pictures that we had of Arianna and Dan in our introduction slide.
Yeah, it's not standard. I probably would do a soft advise not to, but I don't think I don't have a strong opinion on it.
When should you start working on a resume? Is sophomore year too early? Should you wait until junior year?
Right now. Yeah. I think we mentioned this, like build your everything resume right now. Put it all in there. Think about the structure, get your bullet points. It's okay, if each bullet point should be something that you've accomplished in that role. And it's okay in your like draft resume, that you start right now as a sophomore to have like 6 bullet points underneath this club that you participated in. When it gets to your real resume, you're only going to want 2 or 3 max, right? Because you don't have that much space, but having it there to reference, is a good idea. And you may change over time what you want to emphasize. Yeah, do it now.
I wish that I had started a resume or like a running list when like many years ago. And it's definitely something you should also constantly add to as you're doing new activities. Just regularly look at and see what you can add.
It can feel kind of, I remember it felt kind of daunting putting together my first resume. So you're not alone if it feels that way. Set aside a couple hours on a Saturday or something to say like, this is my resume time, and like just do a quick dirty first draft. Just getting started on it, I think can really take you a long ways.
Yeah, I feel like just getting those first couple, just getting the bullet points down, and you can refine it all later is a good way to start. So for college applications, how do you send in the resumes? Do you upload them, link them, copy and paste? And you two might know a little bit better, but I think it's going to depend on which school you're applying to and how they're asking for it. But I would assume you're uploading a document into the Common App or whatever application system.
Yes, for the Common App or for it will depend on which school it is. They'll have the upload link available. Of course, there is additional information section. Only use that section if you really need to include additional, information that is very pertinent to what is needed in the application. But in most cases, it's going to be the upload link.
Can you take more than one internship in a year?
Sure.
Yeah, I once did 5 at once.
Oof,
Wow.
did you do anything else?
It was it's not, again, it's one of those things, quality versus quantity, because you're going to end up spreading yourself so thin. But yes, you can take more than one internship in a year. What's the purpose of taking more than one internship in a year? Is it necessary? That's what I would.
What are you learning? What are you passionate about? Yeah. So all these things are depends with some of these principles. Thinking about, is it more of the same, or are you showing growth? Right. That's something to pay attention to as well. Triple major. There's a question about a triple major. So I was somebody who in college made the mistake of, I don't know if it was a mistake, but I mean, I graduated with like way too many over 200 credit hours. And because I was one of those people, maybe if you're listening to this call, like you're excited about college, maybe you're like me a little bit, you're just like, I love school, or like, I just love to learn. And then I got out of college and I realized, you can keep learning. There's so many great learning resources. So don't kill yourself trying to do like a triple major unless for some reason it really, really aligns with your like your career trajectory. You can use minors to round out, some of those interests. But be a lifelong learner. That's what I would say, rather than triple major.
If you're going to triple major, you want to extend your degree a year or two to fit it all in.
There's so much to explore in college. I don't know that you want to spend it all. I wouldn't want to spend it all in just taking courses.
Yeah. Are certificates important? And if so, can you recommend some for a CS major?
Certificates are as important as you make them to be. So again, if it's something that's going towards a project, something that's going to continue what you're already establishing passion in. If CS is something that you want to do in college, maybe getting certifications in the different languages would be great. Or you're trying to get an internship that further what you already got a certificate in, would then help make the reason for why the certificate is important.
So it sounds like if you have them, you should add them, but you shouldn't get a certificate to add it to your resume. You should be getting one to extend your learning.
There we go. Yes.
And it is one way to like signal or quantify like your learning, right? So if you're doing like if you're doing a Udemy course or a Coursera course or something, like getting the certificate is a way to quantify what you've learned instead of just saying I've been studying CS. So it can help as like a little line item.
Once a curriculum has been sent, how long does it take to wait for the answer? So I think that's once your application and resume have been sent to colleges, how long does it typically take to receive an acceptance? And I think that will depend on if it's rolling admissions, if they have a lot of colleges have specific dates that they get decisions out on. So very much it depends, but Dan or Arianna, do you have anything else to add there?
No, that what you said is absolutely, yeah.
Yep, it's all online. You can find it for your school.
Yeah. So if you make the recommended LinkedIn account, what information should be added in addition to what will be on the one-page resume? Should you be posting, joining groups, adding photos? Do either of you have any thoughts on that?
I mean, for me, I will say like LinkedIn is kind of my running resume. So I just continue to add the experiences, and I think that's LinkedIn's vibe. I don't know how other than to explain it, but I continue to add my experiences that I have. If I'm learning a new skill, or if I've gotten another certification, or whatever the case is, I'm just continuing to add it to my LinkedIn. And whoever is viewing said LinkedIn will look at the relevant, probably your most recent experiences anyway. So that's how I treat LinkedIn. I don't know if others treat it differently.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah,
yeah, go for it.
Oh no, go ahead.
Yeah, you know, it's nice to show an online presence. Can be, you know, it's not uncommon for somebody to like look you up on LinkedIn eventually. I don't know how often that happens in, you know, an admissions, you know, situation, but you know, starting to get involved there could be a great way to network if you're looking for internships, right? So it can help you get some of these activities that we're talking about. You know, and you got to start with that, like, you know, well, you've got to start with that like zero contacts at some point, and so the sooner you do that, the better off you'll be.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think
Especially if you, oh, go ahead, sorry.
I was just gonna say, like, as you move on and like move through college, if you start connecting with maybe professors of classes that you're really interested in, or people you've taken internships with, can be a great way to network. And as you start your career, joining groups that are pertinent to that, you might be able to learn new and interesting things about your field of study that will help you in your career. But I think that when you're still in high school and early college, LinkedIn, using it kind of how Arianna said, as a running resume, is a great way to use it. And you can worry about being active on it later if it is helpful in your career.
Indeed. And I will say, for more of the, depending on what you're looking to intern in, it's great to connect. There might be internships that are not posted, or labs that are not posted, that you might be able to get in the door doing it that way. That's how I was able to get a lab position in high school, by connecting through LinkedIn. So it is possible. And with newer and newer generations, it's probably going to be more of a commonplace thing. Again, however, it depends on, it's not a big deal right now. That's the whole point. Just continue to have that in your back pocket as you continue through life.
Yeah. We're talking about a social media account you created to teach about something: mental health, cooking, business, be helpful for your resume, or something you should add.
Yeah, Lena, I love this. I think this is a great idea. Be mindful of how do you quantify it. So you want to think about like, how many people have you reached, or how many courses have you taught, or how has it grown over time, right? So that's what will help it stand out. But I think it's a great thing to be working on.
Especially if it de-stresses, you know, if you love it, you know, that's something you can continue to do throughout, you know, you can continue it on beyond college as well. So that's awesome.
Yeah, definitely. And I think it was Dan who mentioned earlier, being able to quantify, add statistics to your resume is a fantastic thing. And being able to say, I grew from 0 followers to X amount of followers in this amount of time. Great stats to use. Does summer programs offered by a college, are those a good asset to add to a resume? I think if we have a couple questions about should I put like courses that you're taking on master class or summer programs on a resume? So we can kind of broadly answer that now.
Yes. If you can fit it on your resume, sure. If it's adding, again, what we've been saying, if it's adding to what you're passionate in and what you're trying to, and you're learning something, and it's something that can further be snowballed into something else, perhaps, then yes, by all means. But if you're just doing it to check a box, then perhaps not do it.
Okay. Dan, anything else to add there?
No, yeah, I think that's good. I mean, it's also a great way to just like understand like that college. So particularly when you're applying to that college, you can reference that experience and have that shine on there. But yeah, this fits in the same category of like courses you take, experiences you go on. Is it rounding you out? Are you showcasing new skills? Are you exploring your passions and demonstrating that?
Here's one more question we have that's kind of similar in that vein, but I think is an important thing that we touch on specifically. I have a part-time job at the YMCA, and it's not related to my STEM major, but it does show my skills dealing with customers. Should I include it in my resume? So I think the overarching question here being, is it okay to put experiences that you have that aren't directly related to the field of study that you want to go into on your resume?
Mhm. Yeah, look for the it is right, because you're building a well-rounded profile, and so you can demonstrate a lot of things at your job at the YMCA. So think about, how do you show initiative, how do you show leadership, how do you show creativity, how do you show ability to work with diverse people, work across differences, collaborate. Like it's more about the skills and like what you make of it at the job than it is about excuse me, than it is about the job itself. And maybe there's a way to bring in your STEM interests. I don't know, we'd have to have a conversation about that to explore what you specifically do at the YMCA, but there may be a way to bring in your interests more into that job too.
I feel like there's so many skills that are transferable across fields that don't seem related at all, but working with customers, that shows people skills, which is important when working in a lab or in like on research projects, being able to work with coworkers, think on your feet. All of those skills are transferable.
Yeah, and think about like what you're learning from it, and what how your values play out in your job. So being reflective about it, keeping a journal about what you're doing or learning through your job can be a good way to squeeze insights out of the experience.
All right, and we're almost out of time, so we'll go for one more question before we wrap up. Dan and Arianna, it's going to put you on the spot a little bit. When you both applied to college, Stanford and Dartmouth, respectively, what did you add to your resumes to stand out? So any examples that either of you can give?
I did what Dan had already mentioned as far as quantifiable, making sure that you're including numbers and statistics in your resume. So even if, let's say it was a club of 10 and I grew and I helped reach or recruit 10 more members, if you put it in percentage, that's a lot. That sounds a lot better than just saying I helped recruit 10 people to the club. So saying you helped grow it by X percentage. So I did things like that just to help stand out. And also everything that I was doing, I was passionate about leadership. So I might not necessarily been passionate about all of the different extracurriculars I was in. Again, I was the girl that was in a lot of different clubs and activities, checking resume boxes or checking boxes. So I can speak from experience when I say it's not good to do that. But those are some of the things that I did to stand out, is putting quantifiable numbers there.
Yeah, same. A lot of the things that we've talked about here. I guess one additional thing that we haven't talked a ton about is like tailoring the resume to the school. So when I did apply to Stanford, I tried to emphasize more, like Stanford's known for entrepreneurship, it's known for technology, it's known for interdisciplinary studies. So I did try to choose line items that emphasize those things, and it was a slightly different resume that I sent to Stanford than I sent to other schools. And so I think that is one way that you can stand out, and that goes back to the slide that Arianna was talking about, of like understanding that school's kind of ethos and mission, and like what they're kind of like known for and unique for, and letting that kind of impact the specific resume you send to that school.
Absolutely. And at that time, I myself was applying to scholarships first, before even doing the college applications. So I was looking at, like Dan said, looking at the mission statement. How can I show that I'm a Gates Scholar or I'm a Questbridge Scholar? Just really trying to align and see what that looks like, or who were past candidates that were selected and what maybe they were involved in, with, of course, not trying to mold yourself into what you think the image is, but how you can just highlight those features in your own resume better.
Yeah, you can think if you're telling a story to your friends, you tell the story a little differently based on who you're talking to, right? So know your audience, and your resume should also kind of reflect you knowing your audience a little bit.
Absolutely.
All right. Well, I want to thank everyone for joining us today. It was a pleasure to have you all here to talk about supplementing your resume and transcript. Dan and Arianna, thank you so much for all of your wisdom. It's always a pleasure to learn from you both. We'll send out an email early next week with a link to the recording of this webinar and any links and links to our site. So if you want to schedule a consultation with us, if you want to learn a little bit more about the services that we provide and how we can help you with your resume and applications. But I hope everyone has a really great rest of their weekends. Thanks for joining us today.
Good luck, everyone.
Bye, you all. Thank you.
Bye.